Is there any convincing evidence and data that shows how many people overdose on opioids that were prescribed and how many overdose on opioids that were obtained? It might have been prescribed to somebody, but were obtained illegally in some other mechanism.
So the question, I believe, is there any evidence on where individuals that have
How much
obtained...
of it get it illegally through illegal?
And I don't have any of those figures with me right now, but I know there are studies of individuals that have obtained prescriptions through legal means, quite frankly, and then there's also figures in articles that I have read where individuals are stealing prescriptions or obtaining them illegally. I don't, unfortunately, have the statistics to answer your question right now.
But it is true that a lot of legally obtained opioids are in fact sold or otherwise distributed to people other than people who...
Absolutely. Yes, 100%.
I'll tell you a number. My staff's responsible for the credibility of this number. I'm not taking responsibility for it, although I have a great staff and he's behind me. And I'm sure he's right, but I couldn't believe it when I read my homework last night. In the state of Georgia, we have over 541 million doses of opioids circulating in the state. That's 54 doses for each man, woman, and child living in our state. Does that sound like a state of 10.5 million people? How does that sound to you in terms of accuracy?
It does sound accurate, yeah.
It's way too much, and it's way too many. A year ago, Tuesday, or a year ago, Monday, I had some major surgery. And when I became conscious and started recognizing what was going on post-surgery, I got into an educational session with my physician and the pharmacist on opioids, oxycodone, hydrocodone, all kinds of things like that. Because of being a United States Senator and having a great chairman like Lamar Alexander and people who focus on things like the opioids and people like you testifying, even though I was still recovering from the surgery and the anesthetic that I had, I knew that was dangerous stuff. And I asked him, are there alternatives to hydrocodone and other things that I could go ahead and take? I don't want to run the risk of getting anything bad. And so basically, I was prescribed 6 Tylenols a day and dealt with my pain with 6 Tylenols a day. My discomfort, it didn't do all the pain. Do we do a good enough job of aggressively counseling patients who have procedures that are painful by recommending alternative sources other than opioids?
So I have a personal example to share with you as well. To answer your question, I think not enough of a good job, but we're getting there. My father actually had knee surgery in Chicago, where very similar situation. Is not an immigrant here, doesn't speak a lot of English that well, and the provider had come in and just said, "Here are your prescriptions." And they happen to be, opioid prescriptions, of course, for pain management after the knee surgery, without much follow-up or education in that sense. So I think to answer your question, and then there are all these alternatives, but we have to be careful with those alternatives because of the CDC, I believe, had released a study here on morphine equivalents, which in high dosages can be just as detrimental as what you're seeing with, traditional opioids, like you said, with the hydrocodone, Oxycontin, and Percocet and whatnot. So. We're getting there. It's still about education. I think we continue to need education our provider community and our member communities as well.
But everybody's testimony has been fantastic, and I appreciate it a lot. But you've all really, in one way or another, endorsed the more data, the better. The predictive analytics, which is a great term. It sounds like I went to Georgia Tech when I say that. I didn't go there, but it sounds good anyway. But that type, so we can better cast where somebody would be at risk and hopefully get them into a preventive environment before they ever are tempted with the drugs would help us an awful lot. And I think would be one of the roles this committee can take. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.